My name is Megan, and the first time I walked into my brother's cafe as the owner. Not the broke little sister, he didn't recognize me at first. He was too busy arguing with a vendor about unpaid invoices to notice the woman standing in the doorway, business folder in hand, looking around like she'd seen a ghost. In a way, I had. Because this place, the cracked concrete floor, the flickering neon sign, the mismatched vintage couches was where my college fund had gone to die. "Can I help you?" he finally snapped, turning toward me with that same impatient expression he'd used on me our whole lives. I held up the manila folder with the bank's logo on it. "Yeah," I said. "I'm here to talk to the new owner." "You're looking at him," he said. "No," I said, opening the folder and sliding a paper across the counter toward him. "You're looking at her." He stared down at the purchase agreement. At my name. At the signature line he'd signed a few days earlier, not realizing who was on the other side of the deal. Then he looked up at me, face draining of color. "You have got to be kidding me," he whispered. I wasn't. This is the story of how my parents used my college money to fund my brother's big business idea, and how, years later, I quietly bought that failing business out from under him. I grew up in a medium-sized town in Ohio, the kind where there's one mall, 3 high schools, and more fast food drive-thrus than trees. My parents weren't rich, but they were stable, at least that's how it looked from the outside. Dad was an electrician for a commercial contractor. Mom worked in HR at a hospital. We had a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, a minivan, and a dog that shed on everything. On paper, we were boringly normal. But in our house, there was a very clear division of who got what. My older brother, Adam, got the vision. I got the responsibility. Adam was 3 years older than me, and according to our parents, born to be a leader. He was charming, loud, and always half an inch away from trouble. He talked teachers into extra credit and bosses into second chances. He also quit every job within 3 months. "It's not challenging enough," he'd say, flopping onto the couch with a sigh. "I'm not meant to be some 9-to-5 drone. I'm an entrepreneur." My parents ate it up. "He's just wired differently," Mom would say, watching him pace around the kitchen talking about app ideas and sneaker-flipping schemes. "He's going to do something big one day." I, on the other hand, did boring things. Like homework. Like dishes. Like showing up to work shifts on time and not quitting without notice. When I got straight A's on my report card, my parents said, "Nice job, Meg," and went back to talking about Adam's latest project. When he got a B- in a class he'd nearly failed, we celebrated with takeout. I learned early that in our family, being dependable meant being invisible. There was one thing that was supposed to be mine. My college fund. They started talking about it when I was around 12. "If you keep this up," Dad said one night after a parent-teacher conference, "you'll have your pick of schools. We've been putting a little away for you since you were born. Grandma helped too. You won't have to worry as much as we did." That phrase of putting a little away became a kind of mantra. Whenever I worried aloud about money, Mom would say, "That's why we have your college fund, honey. You just focus on your grades." When my grandparents gave me savings bonds or birthday checks, Mom would smile and say, "We'll put this into your 529 plan." I didn't fully understand what a 529 was then. I just knew it meant college money with my name on it. We didn't talk about any such fund for Adam. They said he wasn't the college type, that he was going to make his own way in business. Fine by me. He didn't want school. I did. We each had our path, or so I thought. In high school, I was that kid. Honor roll. AP classes. Band. Part-time job at a bookstore in the mall. Not because I loved being busy, but because I had a plan. I wanted to go to a state university about 4 hours away. Not the most expensive, not the cheapest. They had a great business program and a decent scholarship for kids who, like me, were nerdy and broke. I mapped it all out. Scholarship plus federal aid plus the college fund equaled 4 manageable years without drowning in debt. I brought this plan to my parents at the start of senior year. We sat at the dining table with brochures and a laptop. My dad did his calculator thing. "Okay," he said. "Tuition minus your scholarship, plus housing, plus meal plan. It's a lot. But between your fund and some loans, it's doable." "How much is in the fund now?" I asked. I'd never seen an actual number. "In the low 5 figures," Mom said vaguely. Enough to make a dent. Low five figures sounded huge to me. $10,000–$15,000? That was more money than I'd ever imagined having attached to my name. I went to bed that night feeling safe. I'd done everything right. I had a future. I didn't know that, at that exact moment, my parents were starting to panic about my brothers. Adam graduated high school by the skin of his teeth and bounced his way through a couple of community college classes he never finished. He worked at a big-box electronics store for a while, then at a trendy restaurant downtown. He got fired from both. Management doesn't understand my vision, he'd complain. He spent hours in our basement with his friends playing video games, sketching out business ideas on whiteboards. I ignored it. I had scholarships to apply for, exams to study for. Then, sometime during my junior year, the restaurant he'd worked at went viral on social media for their insane milkshakes and gamer nights. Adam saw it and got obsessed. "This is it," he told my parents. "A cafe and gaming lounge. Coffee, pastries, high-end PCs, consoles and booths, tournaments, streams. We could have a stage with big screens. It would crush in this town." Mom's eyes lit up. "That's actually not a bad idea," she said. Dad nodded slowly. "Could be," he said, "if it's done right." Adam took that as full speed ahead. "Me and Jake have been working on a business plan," he said, pulling up a PowerPoint he'd clearly made 5 minutes before. "We just need startup capital, rent for a space, equipment, build out." My parents glanced at each other. "How much are we talking?" Dad asked. Adam named a number that made my stomach hurt. Too much, I thought. But my parents didn't shut it down. Instead, Mom said, "We don't have that just lying around, honey. We'd have to get creative." That should have been my first red flag. Creative, in our house, usually meant messy and expensive later. But I was busy. ACT prep, AP exams, college visits. I wasn't invited to Adam's business meetings. I didn't realize the creative solution they settled on involved me. Or more specifically, my fund. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a throwaway comment at Thanksgiving. My grandparents were over. My grandpa poured himself another coffee and asked, "So, how's that college fund we started for you, Meg? Making a dent in those big tuition bills yet?" I laughed. "I don't know," I said. "I haven't seen the statement, but Mom says it's looking good." Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Grandpa frowned. "You mean you don't get copies of the statements?" he asked. "We told your parents we wanted you to see how compound interest works." "I'm sure it's fine," Mom said quickly. "We've got it all in one place. You know how kids are with paperwork." I didn't think too much of it. Adults like to talk in weird finance code. I trusted her. That trust died a few months later. It was February of my senior year. I had an acceptance letter from my top school on the corkboard above my desk, held up with a thumbtack shaped like a star. We'd filled out the FAFSA. I'd gotten my financial aid package, a mix of grants, work study, and loans. The missing piece was the college fund. I needed to know exactly how much was there so we could finalize housing and make sure I wasn't signing up for something we couldn't afford. One Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen and found my parents huddled over the laptop, whispering urgently. They jumped a little when they saw me. "Hey," I said. "Can we go over the tuition numbers this weekend? I need to tell the school by April if I'm living on campus." Mom closed the laptop in one quick motion. "Sure, honey," she said. "We'll sit down later." "When later?" I asked. "I need to know how much is in the 529 so we can decide between the standard dorm or the cheaper one. If it's tight, I'll take the cheaper one and maybe skip the meal plan." Silence. Dad stared at the table. Mom fiddled with her coffee mug. "What?" I asked. "We need to talk to you about the fund," Dad said finally. My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "There isn't as much in there as we hoped," Mom said. "How much is in there?" I asked. She swallowed. "Right now?" she said. "Nothing." My brain misfired. "Nothing," I repeated. "What do you mean nothing?" "We had to use it," she said quickly. "Some for the house when your dad's hours got cut. Some for medical bills. Some for the cafe," Dad said quietly. I stared at him. "For Adam's cafe?" I asked, my voice going thin. "It's not just his cafe," Mom said. "It's a family business. Your dad co-signed. We're all invested." I blinked. You're telling me, I said slowly, that my college fund, my 529, the thing you and Grandma have been talking about since I was 12, went into Adam's gaming cafe. It's a real business, Mom said defensively. With real potential. This isn't some stupid pyramid scheme. We did the math. If it takes off, it'll pay back everything. And more. But right now, I said, it is empty. Yes, Dad said. But try to look at the big picture, Meg. This cafe could set our whole family up. If it succeeds, we can help with your loans, help you buy a car, help with grad school. I needed help with undergrad, I cut in. This year. Right now. You have options, Mom said. You can take more loans. You can live at home and go to the state school in town. You're so bright, you'll get scholarships. My hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why did you keep telling me not to worry, that the fund had me covered? If it was already gone. We thought we could replenish it before you needed it, Mom said weakly. Adam's launch got delayed. Some equipment cost more than we thought. But it's going to blow up, Megan. You've seen how packed it is some nights. I've also seen how much he gives away for free because he can't say no, I said. And how he pays his friends under the table. And how he keeps forgetting to collect cover charges for tournaments. Dad frowned. You don't understand how business works, he said. You've only ever worked hourly jobs. Sometimes you have to take risks to build something big. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your brother. And college was my once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I said. You knew that. You knew I was counting on that money. You're resilient, Mom said. You can handle a few bumps. Adam can't. If this cafe fails, he'll be crushed. We couldn't let that happen. There it was. The core belief of my family. Laid bare. I could take it. He couldn't. So I had to. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly. I did everything you asked, I said. I got the grades. I stayed out of trouble. I worked. I kept my head down. You told me do this, and your future is safe. And behind my back, you gambled it on your son's dream. We didn't gamble, Mom said. We invested. In our family. One day you'll understand. Maybe I would. But in that moment, all I understood was that the people who were supposed to protect my future had sold it off without telling me. I didn't go to my dream university. I couldn't. The financial aid office did what they could, but without any family contribution, the numbers were brutal. I would have had to take on so much private loan debt that I'd be paying it off for decades. Instead, I enrolled in community college 15 minutes away. I took night classes and worked full-time at the bookstore. On weekends, I picked up shifts at the cafe. Yes, that cafe. Because my parents insisted that if the business succeeded, it would benefit all of us. You're part of this too, Mom said. When you're not in class or at the store, you should help out. We're all sacrificing. Sacrificing looked different on each of us. For Dad, it was long hours and the risk of a second mortgage. For Mom, it was stress and juggling bills. For Adam, it was the occasional 12-hour day when he actually showed up and pretended to be a manager. For me, it was my entire college plan. At the cafe, I scrubbed tables, made drinks, ran events. I watched Adam comp meals for his friends, double their drink shots for free, and give away hours of PC time because these guys are influencers. Meg, it's marketing. I watched him flirt with every barista under 25. I watched him forget to ring in employee meals and slip cash into his pocket from the register. Anytime I raised concerns, he brushed me off. Relax, he'd say. You've got that corporate brain already. This is a vibes-based business. I started reading business textbooks for fun. Not because I was particularly fascinated, but because I wanted to understand exactly how badly he was mismanaging the place that had eaten my education. Profit and loss. Balance sheets. Cash flow. Terms that had once sounded fuzzy started to sharpen. The more I understood, the more horror I felt. The cafe was packed some nights, sure. But the numbers didn't care how fun the atmosphere was. The numbers cared about rent, payroll, cost of goods, loan payments. And the numbers were not pretty. 3 years passed like this. Me, grinding through classes part-time, piecing together an associate degree in business. Adam, riding the high of being a local entrepreneur, getting featured in small lifestyle blogs, throwing themed nights at the cafe. My parents, doubling down on their belief that this was all going to work out. You'll see, Mom would say whenever I so much as looked skeptical. Once the loans are paid off, this place will be a gold mine. Your brother will take care of us all. They said nothing about taking care of me. I took care of myself. By 21, I had an associate degree, a full-time job in the accounting department of a manufacturing company, and a clear view of just how deep my brother's business was sinking. He'd stopped paying certain vendors on time. He was months behind with the tax payments. The cafe's Yelp reviews had dropped from 5 stars to 3. The PCs lagged because he'd put off upgrades. The fryers broke and got patched together instead of replaced. He'd taken out a high-interest short-term loan from a sketchy online lender to cover a slow month, and the repayments were bleeding him. I knew all of this because I still sometimes did the books when he wanted to go out of town. I'd sit in the office after close, surrounded by crumpled receipts and empty energy drink cans, and think, this is my college fund decomposing in real time. The breaking point came in the form of a letter. I wasn't supposed to see it. Adam had left it on the office desk under a pizza box. I went in to grab my bag, knocked the box aside, and there it was. A notice from the bank. Notice of default and intent to accelerate. I read it twice, my stomach sinking. The cafe's business loan and the big one the bank had given them based on my parents' house as collateral was in serious arrears. If they didn't bring it current, the bank could demand the entire balance immediately. Adam barged in while I was still holding the letter. Hey, get out of my what are you doing? He snapped, snatching it from my hand. What is this? I asked. You're months behind? It's under control, he said, crumpling the letter. We've had a slow season, that's all. The bank is overreacting. They don't send these for one late payment, I said. This means you're in real trouble, Adam. He rolled his eyes. Relax, he said. You're not my accountant. I've got this. You don't, I said softly. This is serious. If the cafe goes under, you'll drag Mom and Dad's house down with it. Their retirement, everything. His jaw clenched. Why do you always act like you're rooting for me to fail? He snapped. Is it because you had to do community college and you're jealous that I'm actually doing something cool? I stared at him. Jealous? I repeated. Of a failing cafe that ate my college fund? He flinched, just a little. Then he smirked. You're the one who decided to do the safe thing, he said. Maybe if you believed in me instead of nitpicking everything I do, things would be different. I left before I said something that would blow up the entire family. On the walk to my car, the cold air burned my lungs. I knew, in that moment, that the cafe was going down. The question was how much damage it would do on the way, and whether there was anything I could salvage. At work, I handled accounts payable and financial reporting for a mid-size manufacturer. Nothing sexy, but I saw a lot of balance sheets. I saw what healthy companies looked like on paper, and I saw what dying ones looked like. The cafe was in the second category. I started staying late, reading up on small business workouts, asset purchases, and distressed sales. I talked to one of the senior accountants, a woman named Priya, under the guise of helping a friend who had a struggling business. She saw through that in 5 seconds. This is about your brother, isn't it? She asked. And my parents, I admitted. They tied their house to his business. If it goes under, they're going to lose everything. And I'm mad at them, really mad, but I don't want them homeless. She nodded. Those things can both be true, she said. You can be furious and still not want them on the street. What can they do? I asked. What can I do? She leaned back, thinking. Well, she said, there are a few options. They can try to refinance, which is unlikely if the business is already in default. They can negotiate a short sale, or the bank can foreclose, shut the business down, and liquidate the assets. Is there any world where someone else could buy the business? I asked. Keep the jobs, keep the space, just with better management? Sure, she said. If the bank is willing. It's called an asset purchase. You don't buy the company's debts, just its equipment, lease, maybe its name if there's any goodwill left. Then you run it your way. I chewed my lip. And what happens to the old owners? I asked. Depends, she said. Sometimes they walk away. Sometimes they stay on as employees. Sometimes they get bought out for pennies and sulk forever. She eyed me. Why? She asked. Are you thinking of buying them out? The idea had been a vague fantasy in my head. Hearing her say it out loud made it real. I don't know, I said. I don't have that kind of money. You'd be surprised what's possible when a bank just wants a bad loan off its books, she said. Do you have good credit? Any savings? Anyone who'd partner with you? I have some, I said slowly. Not a lot. But more than I did at 18. She nodded. Start by talking to the bank, she said. Hypothetically. Don't mention that you're related, at least not right away. See what they're looking at. If the numbers can work, then we can talk about structures. That night, I went home and pulled up the cafe's website. I looked at pictures of the neon lights, the latte art, the smiling people at tournaments. Then I opened a new browser tab and typed, how to buy a failing small business. Approaching the bank felt like sneaking into the enemy camp. I made an appointment with the commercial lending officer whose name was on the default notice. Mr. Richard Zand showed up in my best I know what I'm doing outfit. Blazer, slacks, sensible heels. We sat in his glass-walled office overlooking the lobby. So, he said, glancing at the business card I'd handed him, which listed my job at the manufacturing company. You said you wanted to talk about opportunities in our special assets portfolio? Translation: the problem loans. Yes, I said, heart pounding. I'm interested in potentially purchasing a small hospitality business that I believe is on your books. He raised an eyebrow. Which one? Stage 1 Cafe and Amp Gaming Lounge, I said. On 5th Street. He leaned back, expression shifting. That one, he said. You have some connection to it? I've worked there in the past, I said carefully. I know the location, the clientele, the equipment. I believe it has potential under different management. That was all true. I did not mention that I knew the owners more intimately than any employee ever could. He tapped his pen on the desk. Well, he said, it's certainly in trouble. They're behind on payments. We've been in discussions about restructuring, but frankly, they haven't presented a convincing plan. Hypothetically, I said, if someone wanted to buy the business assets and take over the lease, what would that look like from your side? He studied me more closely. Are you working with the current owners? He asked. I'm exploring options on my own, I said. I'd rather not waste my time or yours if the bank isn't open to it. He considered that. Okay, he said finally. Hypothetically, if we decided the current borrowers were not salvageable, we'd be open to selling the assets, equipment, fixtures, maybe the trade name to a qualified buyer. We'd want a clean break from the existing loan. No lingering guarantees. What kind of price range are we talking? I asked. Ballpark. He named a number. It was significantly less than what my parents and Adam had originally borrowed. Of course it was. Used equipment, worn fixtures, a tarnished brand and a shaky niche. The bank wanted out more than they wanted to maximize every last dollar. That number was still scary. But it was also, with creative financing and maybe a small partnership, possible. Would you require the current owner's cooperation? I asked. Not necessarily, he said. If they default, we have the right to seize assets. But a cooperative transaction is always smoother. Meaning, if Adam and my parents came to the table willingly, everyone's life would be easier. I thanked him, took his card, and left with my brain buzzing. On the drive home, I thought about something Priya had said in passing. You can't save a business to fix a relationship, she'd told me. You'll fail at both. Make sure you're doing this because the numbers work, not because you're trying to buy their love. So I did the numbers. Over and over. I built spreadsheets. Best case, worst case, middle of the road. Even with conservative estimates, if the cafe was managed properly, tight controls, better hours, targeted events, it could at least break even while I paid off the purchase. Maybe even turn a small profit. More importantly, from a cold financial standpoint, it was a better use of my money than any degree I'd now aged out of wanting. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. The business that had destroyed my college plans was now my best shot at capitalizing on everything I'd learned the hard way. The hardest part wasn't the math. It was the decision. Did I really want to tie myself to this place? To put my money into the same walls that still smelled like burnt espresso and teenage arrogance? Did I want to be my brother's savior or his executioner? I decided I didn't want to be either. I wanted to be his landlord, his boss. Or, if he couldn't handle either role, his buyer. So I formed an LLC. A separate company with a neutral name, Brightline Hospitality Group. No trace of my last name. No obvious ties to me. I went back to Mr. Richards with a rough proposal. If the current owners agree to an asset sale, I said, my company would purchase the equipment and take over the lease. We'd put down this much in cash, finance the rest on new terms, and sign a fresh personal guarantee. Yours? He asked. Yes, I said. I have a stable W-2 income, decent credit, and collateral in another property. Priya had helped me prep every supporting document. Pay stubs. Tax returns. A business plan that actually involved a budget. He looked it over, eyebrows climbing. This is surprisingly thorough, he said. More than what we got from the current borrowers, frankly. I didn't say, because I actually read instructions, but I thought it loudly. Let me talk to our special assets team, he said. If we go this route, we'll need to loop them in. What about the current owners? I asked. They'll need to be approached. He nodded. We can handle that, he said. Better if it comes from the bank at first. If they're willing to cooperate, we'll set up a meeting. If not, he shrugged. We have other ways. I left the bank feeling like I'd set a row of dominoes in motion. All that was left was to see which way they fell. I didn't have to wait long. About a week later, my parents called a family meeting. We hadn't had one of those since we were kids and someone broke a lamp. We gathered at their house around the same old dining table where they'd told me my college fund was gone. Adam looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mom's eyes were red. Dad had his serious face on. What's going on? I asked, even though I already had a guess. The bank's coming after us, Mom blurted. They say we have to sell the cafe or they'll foreclose on the loan and take the house. There it was. I tried to keep my face neutral. What does sell the cafe mean? I asked. Do you have a buyer? They said there's an interested party, Dad said. Some company. Brightline something. They'd buy the equipment and take over the lease, and the bank would write off the rest as a loss. He said loss like it was a personal insult. Is that? I asked. It means we don't lose the house, he said. We'd walk away with nothing, but we also wouldn't be sued into oblivion. Under the circumstances, it's the best we can hope for. Adam slammed his fist on the table. I'm not signing away my business, he said. This is my life, my brand. Stage 1 is me. Stage 1 is the banks, legally, Dad said tiredly. They own most of the equipment in the lease. Without them you have a logo and some ideas. I can turn it around, Adam insisted. We just need more time. And maybe another loan. Another loan? I repeated. With what collateral? You're maxed out. Mom and Dad have nothing left to put up. You're drowning. He glared at me. Of course you'd say that, he said. You've been against this from the start. You want me to fail. I wanted you not to use my future as poker chips, I said. That's different. Mom wiped her eyes. The point is, the bank wants us to meet with this Brightline company next week, she said. They said if we cooperate, they'll work with us. If we don't, they'll let the lawyers take over. Emma, my little sister who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. What happens to you guys if the cafe goes away? She asked. We tighten our belts, Dad said. We'll be fine. I've got a job. We can make the house payments again once we're not feeding that money pit. He shot a look at Adam. Adam stared at his hands. What happens to the staff? Emma asked. Jamie and Kari and those guys? That depends on the buyer, Dad said. If they keep the place running, they might keep some people. Maybe even Adam, if he can behave like an employee. Adam scoffed. I don't work for anyone, he said. I am the boss. Silence. I thought about that. About how he might react when he found out who he'd actually be working for, if he stayed. I kept my mouth shut. The week between that meeting and the first negotiation felt like waiting for a storm to hit a house you knew was badly built. I went through the motions of my day job. I texted Emma memes. I stayed out of the cafe. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the bank and my new company hammered out terms. There were a million details. Purchase price allocation. Transfer of the lease. What would happen to prepaid memberships, gift cards, vendor contracts. I showed up to every call prepared. Numbers. Options. Contingencies. The bank was impressed. You sure you've never owned a business before? Mr. Richards joked. Just other people's mistakes, I said. When everything was tentatively in place, it was time for the meeting with the current owners. The bank hosted it at their conference room downtown. Neutral ground. On the way up in the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked older than the last time we'd all sat around a table like this. Harder around the edges. But there was a steadiness in my eyes that hadn't been there at 18. My parents and Adam were already seated when I walked in with Mr. Richards. Mom's eyes widened. "Megan," she said, "what are you doing here?" I sat down opposite them, lining up my notepad with the edge of the table. "I'm here representing Brightline Hospitality Group," I said. "We're the prospective buyers." Adam laughed, a short, incredulous bark. "No, seriously," he said. "Where's the real buyer?" "I am the real buyer," I said. "Brightline is my company." The room went very, very quiet. Mr. Richards cleared his throat. "As we discussed on the phone," he said smoothly, "Ms. Hayes, that was me, has presented a viable proposal to purchase the business assets and take over the lease. This would allow the bank to release you from your current obligations under the loan, assuming you sign the necessary documents." "You didn't tell us it was her," Mom said, glaring at him. "You didn't ask," he said. "The bank's interest is in resolving the default in a way that minimizes loss. Ms. Hayes has come to the table with a serious offer. That's what matters." Dad looked at me, something like hurt flickering across his face. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked. "Would you have listened?" I asked. He didn't answer. Adam stared at me like I'd pulled off an elaborate prank. "You going to gloat now?" he said. "Show off how perfect you are? Look at me, I went to community college and now I own things." I ignored the jab. "This is business," I said. "Not a family therapy session." I slid the summary sheet toward them. "Here's what I'm offering," I said. "Brightline purchases the cafe's equipment, inventory, and trade name from the bank. We assume the lease. The bank releases you from the remaining debt on the business loan. You walk away free and clear. No more payments. No risk to the house. And what do you get?" Mom asked suspiciously. "A functioning business space, equipment at a discount, and the chance to turn this place around," I said. "I take on all the risk from here." Adam jabbed a finger at the paper. "You're stealing my brand," he said. "My identity. This place is me." "This place is a legal entity that has failed to pay its obligations," Mr. Richards said briskly. "The bank has every right to dispose of the collateral. Ms. Hayes is simply the one willing to take it on." Mom crossed her arms. "This is revenge," she said. "You've wanted to punish us since the day we used your fund. Now you get to take Adam's dream and play boss." I met her eyes. "For a long time I did want revenge," I said. "When I was sitting in community college night classes instead of a dorm, when I was working double shifts while Adam gave away drinks to his friends, I fantasized about this place failing. I'm not going to lie." I took a breath. "But this deal isn't about punishing you," I continued. "It's about protecting myself and giving the cafe a chance to actually work, under management that cares about profit and loss as much as vibes. Why not just let it die?" Emma asked quietly, from her chair at the end. "Walk away. Let the bank close it, because then the bank still comes after Mom and Dad," I said. "They'd lose the house. I don't care enough about revenge to watch them be homeless." "And Adam?" she asked. I glanced at him. He looked furious. But under that, I saw fear. "If he wants to stay on as an employee," I said, "we can talk about a role. On my terms. With an actual job description. If he'd rather start fresh somewhere else, that's his call." Adam snorted. "I don't take orders from my little sister," he said. "Then maybe it's time you learn to take orders from someone," I said. "Because doing everything your way hasn't exactly worked out." Mr. Richards slid the signature pages forward. "You don't have to decide today," he said. "But the longer you wait, the fewer options you have. If this deal falls through, the bank will proceed with legal remedies." Mom glared at the papers. "Of course she swoops in to save the day," she muttered. "So she can feel superior." Dad put a hand on her arm. "Or so we don't lose the house," he said quietly. "Whatever her reasons, this is the best offer we're going to get." He looked at me. "I wish we hadn't put you in this position," he said. "So do I said. In the end, it wasn't a dramatic, cinematic moment. No one flipped the table. No one stormed out. They took the papers home, called the bank's lawyer with questions, dragged their feet for a week. Then they signed. Because math doesn't care about pride. Closing day was anticlimactic. Brightline wired the money. The bank signed over the assets. I signed a new loan agreement, this time with carefully measured terms, manageable payments, a realistic timeline. On paper, Stage 1 cafe and amp gaming lounge became mine. The next step was telling the staff. I called a meeting after hours. The baristas, the cooks, the front desk gamers, the one guy who actually handled maintenance, they all gathered with bored, tired curiosity. Adam lurked in the corner, arms folded. I stood in front of the big projector screen where they usually showed esports tournaments and took a breath. As of today, I said, Stage 1 has a new owner. Me. A ripple of whispers. Some of you know me, I continued. I worked here back in the early days. My name is Megan Hayes. I've been in the background for a long time, watching this place struggle. I believe it can do better. Under new management, with real systems, it can be profitable and stable. That's what I'm here to build. What about our jobs? Someone called out. If you're here, you're staying for now, I said. We're going to review performance, tighten up shifts, and fix the schedule so no one is pulling unpaid overtime or getting sent home early on a whim. We'll have one-on-ones over the next 2 weeks. I let that land. As for Adam, I said, turning slightly, he's been offered a role as events coordinator. If he chooses to accept, he'll report to our new general manager, who will report to me. The days of running this place by vibes are over. All eyes swung to him. He scowled. This is a joke, he said. You think you can just walk in here and turn everything upside down? It's already upside down, I said. I'm trying to set it up right. To the staff, I added, if you have questions about the transition, my door is open. I'll be in the office for the next hour. We'll start with small changes. Menu, hours, better inventory control. Nothing huge right away. After the meeting, people drifted out in clumps, murmuring. Some looked hopeful. Some looked wary. Adam cornered me by the espresso machine. You've humiliated me, he hissed. In front of my staff. In front of our parents. They think you're a hero now. If they think that, it's because I'm doing the thing they thought you would, I said. Actually keeping this place alive. He stepped closer. Why couldn't you just let it die? He demanded. You got your little corporate job. You're doing fine. Why did you have to take this too? Because this was bought with my money, I said. With promises made to me. I'm just taking ownership of what I already paid for. He stared at me, jaw working. Then he spat. I quit. I figured, I said. He stalked out, slamming the door so hard the window rattled. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. One less problem to manage. The months that followed were exhausting. Owning a struggling business is not glamorous. I spent more nights scrubbing grease off kitchen equipment than I did sleeping. I redid the bookkeeping system from scratch. Every free drink? Rang in. Every comp? Logged with a reason. We renegotiated vendor contracts. Switched to a slightly cheaper coffee supplier that was still good. Cut the menu down to what actually sold. Stopped hosting free tournaments and started charging reasonable entry fees with prize pools funded by sponsors, not my pocket. We upgraded a few gaming rigs and sold the truly obsolete ones. I analyzed sales data like it was a sacred text. What days were busy? What hours? What items had the highest margin? Slowly, the chaos turned into patterns. Some staff quit. They were used to the old, sloppy way of doing things. They didn't like schedules or accountability. We hired new people who did. The regulars grumbled at first. Then they got used to a world where their favorite snacks were actually in stock and the PCs didn't crash mid-match. The cafe's online reviews ticked back up. Nothing explosive. Just a slow climb from overpriced and disorganized to fun, clean, good staff. We started turning a small profit. Not enough to make me rich. Enough to make the loan payment without sweating every month. It wasn't a gold mine. It was a functioning business. The one thing my parents had bet on and then refused to run properly. My parents didn't come by for a long time. Pride, probably. And shame. I saw them at family dinners. We danced around the topic. How's work? Mom would ask, like she didn't know where I spent most of my waking hours. Busy, I'd say. We ran a big charity tournament last weekend. Raised money for the children's hospital. She'd nod stiffly. Adam refused to attend those dinners. Emma would text me updates. He blames you for everything, she'd say. Says you stole his future. I'd stare at my phone and think about all the nights I'd spent in that office, balancing ledgers he'd scribbled on napkins. Whose future had been stolen? Eventually, curiosity or nostalgia got the better of my parents. One slow afternoon, they walked in together. They looked around like they were entering a museum of a life they barely recognized. The neon sign was the same, the layout mostly unchanged. But everything was cleaner, sharper, professional. Mom came up to the counter. "I'll have a vanilla latte," she said, like a regular customer. Dad ordered a black coffee. I comped them one of the few times I allowed it. They sat at a corner table. I brought over their drinks. "How's the house?" I asked, making small talk. "Fine," Dad said. "We refinanced after the mess. Got a better rate." "Good," I said. Mom stirred her drink idly. "So," she said finally, "you really turned this place around." "We're stable," I said. "That's all I can ask for right now." She looked up at the chalkboard menu, then around at the kids playing on the PCs. "I always knew this idea had potential," she said. "Your brother just needed more support. He needed accountability," I said. "And someone who understood that giving away half your stock to your friends is not a marketing strategy." She winced. "We were just trying to help him," she said. "He was so lost. We thought, if we gave him something big, he'd rise to the occasion." "You gave him something big that came with paperwork and deadlines," I said. "And you took something big from me to do it." She sighed. "I know," she said quietly. "We didn't think it through. We kept telling ourselves we'd refill your fund before you needed it. Then time caught up, and you didn't tell me," I said. "That's what hurts the most. You let me plan my whole future around something that didn't exist anymore." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry," she said. The words hung there fragile. I believed she meant them. I also knew they didn't magically reset the past. "I appreciate that," I said. Dad cleared his throat. "We're proud of you, kiddo," he said. "Even if this is not how we imagined it." "Not how I imagined it either," I said. He smiled faintly. "But you made it work," he said. "You always do. People want a neat ending to stories like this. They want my brother to come crawling back, begging for a job. They want my parents to grovel, to give me a check labeled college fund repayment with a tearful speech. Real life is messier." Adam eventually moved to another state. Last I heard, he was bouncing between odd jobs and telling people, "I used to own a gaming cafe, but my sister stole it." My parents still flinch a little when anyone mentions stage 1. They still sometimes act like I took advantage of a bad situation. They still have a hard time seeing that no one forced them to sign their names on that loan, or to drain my fund without telling me. But they also pay their mortgage on time. They drive past the cafe and see the lights on instead of a boarded-up window. They know, even if they don't say it, that my decision saved them from losing everything. As for me, I don't feel triumphant when I count the register at the end of the night. I feel steady. Owning this place hasn't made me rich. It hasn't erased the resentment of my 18-year-old self staring at a shattered dream. But it has done something I didn't expect. It's given me back a sense of control. I didn't get to choose what my parents did with my college money. I did get to choose what happened next. I took the knowledge, the frustration, the late-night budgeting skills I learned by necessity and turned them into a business. A business I run on my terms. I hire fairly. I pay people on time. I don't promise my staff things I can't deliver. I don't gamble with their futures to prop up someone else's ego. Sometimes, late at night, when the cafe is closed and the hum of the refrigerators is the only sound, I sit at one of the gaming PCs and pull up old photos. The grand opening. Adam cutting a ribbon, grinning wildly. My parents standing beside him, beaming. Me, in the background, wearing an apron and holding a tray. Then I look around at the present. New staff. New systems. New balance sheet. Same walls. Same neon sign. Different story. Would I still have chosen this path if my parents hadn't used my fund? Probably not. I might have ended up in some corporate job, climbing a ladder I didn't really care about. Instead, I'm here. Often stressed, but building something that's mine. Not because someone handed it to me. Because when everything fell apart, I quietly stepped in and picked up the pieces. So no, I don't feel bad about buying the business that was funded with my stolen college money. If anything, I feel like I finally got a say in how that investment turned out. And if my brother thinks that's cheating, he's welcome to read a balance sheet sometime. Thank you for listening to my story.